In this video, I want to talk about purifying dividends and gains for individual stocks and also for Islamic ETFs. One particular ETF I want to look at is the Invesco Dow Jones Islamic one, as that is a bit more tricky. So do make sure you stick around for the whole video to get the full benefit. Also, do make sure you like and subscribe. Also, a quick disclaimer. Do remember that I am not a scholar or a finance expert. I'm just someone sharing my research online. So always make sure that you do your own due diligence. So when it comes to screening stocks for halal compliance, there are a lot of different criteria to consider before a stock is permissible to invest in. But in this video, I just wanted to look at one particular aspect, and that's the 5% tolerance level. And the reason why I wanted to look at this is because this needs to be purified. So basically, there's no company or little to no companies on the stock market that are completely halal in terms of their revenue, as in they will have at least some element of haram, whether that's interest, income or other source of income. Therefore, what the Sharia board or the AOFI have said is that for a company to be Sharia compliant, its haram income should not exceed 5% of the company's revenue, and any portion of its haram revenue must be purified. You can find out how much of a company's revenue is haram by looking at their financial statements. It will be on the profit and loss account, and the revenue is usually broken down so you can see exactly how much comes from haram sources. I just wanted to show you a quick example of how you can find this out for yourself. Example company I'm looking at is Apple. So you would just need to sort of Google the investor relations page of the company. So what I've put it into Google was just Apple investor relations, and it'll give you all the investor information that you need to find the financial statements. So what I'm going to do is scroll down, and what you want to look at is the annual reports on the Form 10K. So if you click onto this, it will show you the organization's Form 10K. So on here you can see the company's financial statements and other items as well. So if you go in the contents, you can actually see exactly everything you would need as an investor. But we are interested in the profit and loss statement, and we will click this link at the top as it is the most recent statement. And here you can see the sales of the company. So the revenue is basically the sales of a company. You can see how much it's made from products and services and its total net sales, but this doesn't give us a breakdown. However, if you do scroll further down, there is a breakdown. So now we can see exactly how much of the revenue is coming from the different sources. So again, we had the total net sales of 391, which I believe is in billions. And here we can see the total net sales, which is broken down. So you can see by product. So iPhone, MacBook, iPad, and then you've got wearable, home and accessories, and also services as well. So what you would need to do is to find out the haram revenue, you would need to find out which element of these is haram. And obviously if it's more than 5%, then you would not be able to invest in it, as 5% is the actual limit. And if it's less than 5%, then it would be considered permissible to invest in. Another way to find this information is to use halal stock screening apps like Zoya and Musafa. They are both free for initial screening, but they do require subscription to see the breakdown. So you will need to pay for this to unlock this feature. So whichever method you use, you need to find out exactly how much of the revenue comes from haram sources. So that would be the haram revenue and also the doubtful revenue. This should both be below 5%. So I'll just use an example. Let's just assume the haram revenue is 3% and the doubtful revenue is 1%. So that's 4% of haram revenue. So what you would need to do is calculate 4% of your dividends or of your gains and give that much in charity. This is the process known as purification. You may have noticed the maximum threshold is 5%. So if you are still unsure it would be safer to just give 5% in charity. Obviously, there are other factors to consider outside of revenue for a stock to be halal. But in terms of purification, I believe only the haram revenue needs to be purified. I hope that made sense. I will now talk about purifying halal ETFs. When it comes to ETFs, there are two types. One is an accumulating ETF and one is a dividend ETF. The dividend ETF pays out dividends, and you need to purify it the same way that you purify dividend income from normal stocks, as we just spoke about. But how do you know how much you need to purify from the ETFs? In this example, I'll look at iShares MSCI World Islamic ETF. This is an ETF that pays out dividends semi-annually, and its dividend information can be found on its website. So once you have come onto the website, just scroll down and you can see the dividend or distribution information over here, and you can click this to see the full table of how much was distributed and on what date. But if you look here, you can see the purification data. This is what we need to look at to know how much we need to purify. So if you click on here, you can see the full table. So if you scroll to the right, you can see unpurified income. This is the amount per share that you would need to purify. So the first thing you will need to check is how much income you have per share, and then per share you will need to purify this amount per share. So that's how you would purify a dividend paying ETF. You basically just go on the website and find out what amount needs to be purified. All Islamic ETFs should have this information on their website. It will either be shown on the site itself, as we just saw in my previous example, or it would be included in one of the documents. So do check out the documents section of the ETF. The other type of ETF is an accumulating ETF. This is when the ETF receives the dividend, but instead of paying it to us, the shareholders, they reinvest it into the ETF. They should therefore purify the dividend income themselves before reinvesting. Again, you will be able to find this information on the ETF's website. So the ETF I am looking at now is the HSBC MSCI World Islamic ETF. This is an accumulating ETF. So to find out if this ETF purifies its dividends, we can just go into the documents section, and if we scroll down, you can see information about the ETF by clicking any of these documents. But where we want to go is to look at the annual report. So I have opened up the annual report, and we can see on this page the company will donate any such non-permissible income to one or more charities selected by the investment manager. Therefore, we don't need to purify anything. So with accumulating ETFs, they should purify it themselves. However, I now want to look at the Invesco Dow Jones Islamic ETF. As you can see, this is an accumulating ETF. However, if we scroll down and look at the documents section, look at the key investor documents here by clicking this, and you will see here in terms of the dividend policy, it does say income and other profits which are accumulated are not subject to purification prior to being reinvested. So for income purification purposes, investors in this fund may wish to make donations in accordance with the standards issued by the AOFI. However, they haven't made it clear how much we need to purify. I've also looked online to try and find out how to do this, but I couldn't find any solutions. This was quite annoying, as I regularly invest into this ETF and have also covered it on this channel before. I've also just sent Invesco an email regarding this, and I will keep you updated if they respond. However, I did ask ChatGPT to assist. The first thing it said to do was to find out how much dividends the ETF received in the first place. So to find out this information, we again go to the documents section, and then what we want to look at is the latest annual report, so the most recent financial report. So if you click onto this, it will go onto the annual report and financial statements. And if you literally just search for Islamic, it will show you which page will be the financial information for this ETF. So we can now see the financial statement for the Islamic ETF. This was actually on page 441 of this document. But at the top we can see the dividend income, which is what I'm assuming is coming from the individual investments. We can see that the dividend income is shown here, which I believe is 3.8 million. So I did put a prompt in ChatGPT to help me work out how much I would need to purify if I had, say, a £5,000 investment. Do remember that this is ChatGPT, it's not a scholar or anything. But given that I was unable to find any other information online, I have sort of gone with this. If you have any suggestions, or if you could point me in the right direction, do let me know in the comments below. So the first thing that ChatGPT is doing is basically just converting the investment into USD, and this is assuming as at December 31st. If you remember, that was the year end date of the financial statement, so it's using that information. It's basically converted the pounds into USD, as this ETF is in USD, and then the next step is that it's calculating the total net asset value of the ETF, which is 425 million, and it's basically calculating my portion of that, or the portion in this example. That's how it's calculated it, which comes to this amount here. And then the next step is to determine how much needs to be purified. So the total purification amount for the ETF is 192,000, and how this was calculated was that it's 5% of the dividend income. So this is assuming the maximum 5% threshold, and it basically multiplies step 2 by this amount, which comes to $2.88. And again, this will need to be converted, as you will be paying in pounds if you are from the UK. Converts it back into pounds, so that's how much, according to this, would need to be paid based on a £5,000 investment. So that's how I've gone about purifying this ETF. I only found out that they don't purify dividends recently, and seeing as I have spoke about this ETF numerous times on this channel, I felt it was necessary to make a video on it. Do let me know what you think in the comments below, and hopefully we can learn together.